It's a distorted sort of economy. All the progress is in the military sector of the economy. The economic sanctions against Russia has not been as efficient as their initiators believed. So I cannot understand what real economic measures the West has to offer to the Russian leadership in exchange for ending the war.
The US and Russia are negotiating Ukraine's future together in a meeting in Saudi Arabia. Russia's economy hasn't collapsed despite sanctions and threats by the West, but it's still struggling. And this is leverage the US could use in its negotiations. Mikhail Kratikin is an economist and founder of Rus Energy, the consultancy. Thank you very much for joining us. Sanctions against Russia have not caused anywhere near the pain the likes of the US and EU wanted. But does that mean that the Russian economy is stable?
Well, so far we can notice that the Russian economy is resilient and it is going ahead. And the government reported to the president that the increase of the GDP is over 4%, which is quite spectacular. The only problem is that all the progress is in the military sector of the economy, which contributes nothing to the welfare of the citizens and to the non-military industries. It's a distorted sort of economy, and the central bank and the finance ministry are fighting their way uphill, trying to keep the ruble from decreasing its value, trying to restrain the tempo of inflation. And inflation is, very alarming in the eyes of the government. And so I suspect that if something is not done quickly about the Russian economy, it might face a very serious crisis by the end of this year, because the funds that the government can command are approaching depletion. It is both in the sovereign fund, the National Welfare Fund, and the funds that Russia gets from exports of its energy. So we are not expecting an optimistic prospect for the Russian economy so far.
Do you think that the US has significant leverage over Russia in these talks, in the sense that Russia is desperate for an economic lifeline that the US could offer?
I'm very doubtful about the value of the proposals, economic proposals that President Trump can offer to Russia, because first we see that the Russian president behaves as if economy does not matter at all. For example, he started the war and he has been continuing it for 3 years, seeing that the economy is suffering, that the situation with the Russian population is not getting any better. And he has sacrificed, for example, the exports of the Russian natural gas to its political ambitions when he stopped Gazprom from delivering gas to European consumers. And he has caused the Russian gas export business to collapse. And Gazprom is in a very difficult situation. So basically, I do not believe that economic stimuli might be enough for Mr. Putin to stop the war. And I cannot imagine what the United States has to offer to stop the war, after all. And it might be something very significant, such as a lifting of the sanctions.
Just to jump in on that, I mean, Russia could have had that prize in the form of billions of euros worth of energy sales, which they missed out on, not completely, but to a significant chunk because of the sanctions. End the war, remove the sanctions, make money again. So you're saying it's not chosen to go down that route merely as a face-saving exercise for Vladimir Putin?
Well, I'm saying that the economic sanctions against Russia has not been as efficient as their initiators believed. For example, the artificial price cap on the Russian exports of oil, uh, this measure is not working. So Russia has found a way to sell its oil, to deliver its oil with profit, yes, at some discount to China, to India, Brazil, Turkey, and some other countries. And the revenues from the export of oil has not decreased. Actually, they have been decreasing for the past, increasing for the past year, and so we can conclude the sanctions are not efficient. Uh, there are some proposals to strengthen the grip on the Russian economy by, well, introducing more sanctions on the so-called shadow tankers and some secondary sanctions on the buyers of Russian oil. But we see already that first, the Chinese are opening new terminals, private terminals, for accepting the tankers with Russian oil that have been under sanctions. The Indians are preparing new chains of hiding the paths of delivery Russian oil, and the new chains of paying for that oil through the banks which has not been under sanctions. So there is a definite movement towards avoiding any punishment for the sanctions, and the economic measures are not working at all. So I cannot understand what real economic measures the West has to offer to the Russian leadership in exchange for ending the war. And there is a very big doubt on the terms of ending this war. So far, we see that Russia has been occupying about 20%, more than 20% of the territory of Ukraine. And I have a very big question. Does the American president and the West as a whole believe that it would be possible to leave those territories in the hands of the Russian occupiers and then start negotiating new economic benefits for Russia in exchange of just stopping the warfare and not compensating to Ukraine anything for the loss of the territories and the Ukrainian economy?
So this kind of plays out on the other side of the equation as well. So from the European side, if Putin and the Kremlin is not that motivated by the economic benefits because the vice isn't tight enough, so as soon as the war does end, whether it's sooner or later, do you expect Europe will just come crawling back to ramp up its purchases of Russian oil and gas again?
Well, yes, I believe it is quite possible, because now we hear some voices in Europe that call for resumption of deliveries of natural gas, because most of the pipes are still quite capable of delivering that gas, including one of the pipes of the Nord Stream, then the pipeline across Poland to Germany, then the Ukrainian network, well, the Turkish stream, and so forth. Basically, the combined volume of all the pipes that go from Russia to Europe can handle twice the volume of gas which Europe used to receive from Russia before the big war broke out in Ukraine. So technically, logistically, that's everything is in order. The problem is first the trust. So, does Europe believe that it will be possible to trust the Russian president, because he has been known to use gas deliveries as a political weapon? This is the general practice of Russia. Yes, the Europe agreed that by the year 2027 there will be no Russian gas in Europe at all, and so it will have to be reciprocal. If Russia agrees to deliver more gas, then Europe will have to lift some of the restrictions, introduced new regulations for accepting Russian gas. Yes, theoretically it is quite possible, but I believe it's very difficult to trust the supplier, such a supplier as Gazprom, which has been politicized and weaponized to a very large extent.
But on the other hand, it's unlikely that the EU would hold out on buying Russian energy to try and extract some kind of further deal with Russia, saying we can't just reward you by going back to the way things were before, even if Europe has moved away from the full-blown use of Russian energy from before. The EU just doesn't hold much leverage here anymore.
No, I don't think it is a leverage, because we have seen that the Russian president is prepared to sacrifice the market role for Gazprom in Europe for the sake of some political illusions of his. And no one can guarantee that he's not going to repeat that experience in the future.
So if the war does continue further, which for the time being it will, of course, what options are there left for the likes of the Kremlin and the Russian central bank to keep the dual threats of slowing growth and rising prices at bay? I mean, we've had a decent GDP growth coming out of Russia, but the worry is that it won't be able to sustain that if that's purely fueled on military spending.
Yes, we see that the money that the government still can command is approaching to full depletion by the end of the year. Yes, it is possible to make such forecasts. And the central bank has some assortment of possible financial instruments to handle the situation. For example, they can manipulate the bank rates, then to allow the Russian national currency to lose some of the value. But still, what the bank cannot do is to rein in the inflation. And it is possible that by the end of the year, the inflation will be in two digits. So, yes, they are trying to do something. Maybe there will be some impossible financial instruments. Well, it's impossible to imagine, such as during Stalin's time, there was some sort of a loan, state-controlled 3% loan from the population. I remember my mother received part of her wages, part of her salary in those obligations, government bonds, which have never been repaid. And so it's one of the instruments that has not been yet tested. But what remains is the increase of the tariffs on electricity and gas and communal services, then the increase of taxes on industries. We see that so far, for example, oil companies and Gazprom have been forced to pay some additional taxes, which are not in the tax code of the Russian Federation, just to finance the war and to provide some additional input of money to the state coffers. So the instruments are still in the hands of the central bank. They are not very well. That's just a few of the instruments, but the situation is still, not over, I would say, for the Russian economy.
Okay, so certainly the economy will be under more pressure, but that might have little impact on swaying Putin, at least for now. Mikhail Kritikin, thank you very much for your analysis. That was fantastic. Thank you so much.